left. And to the right, please. Over here, please.
It was hard, like every adaptation is hard, but it took 25 years from when I first read it to when it became a film. So in my head it kept changing and I remembered things differently, and it sort of more and more other influences came into the adaptation. So that also made it a free adaptation, but I think it's very much Highsmith's inspired, and my love for her as an author, and you know, as a reader, I just tried to bring as much of that as I could. But it was hard, but very enjoyable.
What I liked about Lauren's character is that I feel like it came at such a nice part of the movie, because it's sort of when all the foundations are being laid, and like at the dinner scene, everything, they're all starting to suss each other out, and it's like when they're all being introduced into each other's life, and I think she's just the one who's having a good time, whereas everyone else has kind of got ulterior motives and is sussing everyone out.
So as a screenwriter, which is what I've done most of the time, I love silent storytelling. My favorite scenes in movies and some of the things I've written have been things where people don't talk, and the looks and stuff, and quite often dialogue is a way to set up a look and a reaction and things like that. So it was a pleasure for me, and with great actors, I think they can do so much more with a look than a line of dialogue, and I was just very fortunate to have a cast who the faces are just so fascinating, and also their truth in how they perform, and they'd look so deep, and I'd have to say very little in terms of directing, and often it was staying out of the way and allowing them really the freedom to be, and I think the truth comes out in performance sometimes, and if you overthink it, it's not as truthful. And I think one of the things I learned as a first-time director was to learn when to stay out of the way of the actors, because they can do it.
So you affirm that? Is that true?
Hoss is a gentleman, as you can tell. He's a very humble man. And often, I don't know if he said that to you, Daisy, but he would say, "You can't handle that line, just please be quiet." It's a fine script, and sometimes we weren't up to the task. But no, it was, I mean, it's nice to play character. And by the way, in the sequel, Daisy's a very, very bad person.
Yeah, she's the cause of the downfall of everyone.
As it turns out. Yeah, she disappears very conveniently at one point in the first movie, but in the second one, which will be coming out next Christmas,
she has vengeance.
She's nasty. No, it's nice. As an actor, it's always nice to have a secret, and if a part's written, you know, even if it's just one scene, and there's no apparent secret, I, as an actor, always try to find one. It's like, seems like a nice person, but maybe they're not. Or seems like a bad person, maybe they're not. You know, even that simple, a secret. But obviously with these kinds of characters, Highsmith characters, or, you know, prototypical film noir characters, and when you say, it's a term that's thrown around a lot, film noir, what's that, you know? Some people say, oh, it needs to have shadows, it needs to be black and white, it needs to have these sorts of clothes or something. It's for me, the only thing I would say is that the characters need to lie and lose, and it needs to end badly, really, for everyone. As long as it does that, it's acceptable to me as film noir, no matter where it takes place. And in the story, it's more like a tip of the hat to other Highsmith stories. Everything's beautiful. You know, you almost envy these people, the way they look, how happy they are, the sun is shining. It's perfect. And then, of course, it falls apart. But it falls apart in a really interesting way. You're with these characters, you care about them in spite of your dislike for them, in spite of being almost embarrassed for them at times, you know. And that's good storytelling.
I read about Highsmith that she started writing. She was inspired by reading psychology books. She was starting criminal stories, writing criminal stories, because she read a lot about by Freud and a lot of theoretical things about psychology. Could you find it?
Oh, I see it everywhere in the book. I mean, the whole idea of why do they end up in Knossos is something about it. It's obviously, for her, when she's writing it, it's about them sinking into going to their lowest depths. The whole way that the Ariadne, Theseus Minotaur story is woven into that. She's constantly, and I think she was more interested in psychology than she was in plot. And sometimes the plot was, harder to adapt because it was, it sort of went in different directions. And she just seemed less interested in plot. When I read all of her books, I find she loves these characters, and she's compassionate towards criminals, and she finds them fascinating in the way that Martin Scorsese, for example, finds gangsters. I think they're artists who just, and with her, I think her love for psychology makes the characters fascinating, but also makes the plot sometimes, inconsistent and not as strong. But I think you feel that's her real fascination.